In the Rings of Power, the dwarves have now discovered mithril in the mines of Moria. This is a very powerful and rare metal which is durable and beautiful. It was seen in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, where Frodo's shirt was made of it and actually saved him from a spear. Finding this material in Episode 4 is a big deal, but unfortunately for the dwarves, it's not all good news, and actually spells doom for their race as we're seeing it in Rings of Power. Curious as to why? Let's dive in and check out the explanation. First, what is the premise of the show? Set in the fictional world of Middle-earth, The Rings of Power is a prequel to the events of The Lord of the Rings. This show follows many characters, with the main protagonist being Galadriel. The story is set in the Second Age of Middle-earth, 3,441 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings. Although the storyline mainly follows the journeys, travels, and trials of Galadriel, it delves into many different races, characters, and plot lines from the original books, furthering upon these and providing context to many of them. Because of this, there is a lot of information that is being given to the viewers which were not originally present in The Lord of the Rings. This ranges from things as small as character development and backstory to things as large as the introduction of new races, lands, and even magical objects. Although the show has been met with plenty of controversies due to some of the decisions of the writers, most notably the changes to Galadriel's character, there is no denying that it has been a hit with some viewers and has been praised for its high production values, great acting, and fascinating story. Second, what is mithril? Mithril is a precious metal found in the fictional world of Middle-earth. It is described as shining like silver, but being stronger than steel. It is also said to be very light and doesn't tarnish. In the Rings of Power, we see that the dwarves have discovered this metal in their mines and are now mining it. This is a big deal because mithril is very rare and valuable. In fact, it is so valuable that it is worth 10 times its weight in gold. The discovery of mithril is a huge boon to the dwarves, and they begin mining it rapidly. Although much of this mithril is lost by the time The Lord of the Rings takes place, it is still a significant discovery. It's also present throughout the story and does lead to Frodo's life being saved within the Fellowship of the Ring. This happens during the Fellowship's travels in the mines of Moria when Frodo is stabbed by a spear. The mithril shirt he was wearing saved him from certain death. Beyond this, why is the discovery of mithril bad news for the dwarves? One of the most important plot lines that The Rings of Power is currently focusing on is the fall of Moria, also known as Khazad-dûm. This was a dwarven kingdom which was located in the Misty Mountains. We see in the show that this kingdom is already in decline by the time Galadriel arrives. The dwarves are mining mithril at a rapid pace, and this is causing problems. The first issue is that mithril can only be found in Moria, so they are depleting their own resources. The second and more pressing issue is that they are digging too deeply and release a Balrog, a demon-like creature that was sealed away long ago. This Balrog proceeds to destroy the kingdom, kill the king, and force the dwarves to flee. This is all information that we already know from The Lord of the Rings. In the movies, we see Gandalf sacrifice himself to save the Fellowship from this Balrog. He eventually defeats it, but is himself killed in the process. What does this mean for The Rings of Power? The Rings of Power is a prequel, and because of this, we have insight into how the story behind the dwarves mining ends. These dwarves become too greedy, ultimately releasing a great evil from the depths of the mine, one which encapsulated itself as Durin's Bane, the Balrog. This is a direct consequence of their actions, and it's hard not to see the parallels between this and our own world today. We are damaging our own planet in the name of greed and power, and it's only a matter of time before we too release a great evil. It will be interesting to see how The Rings of Power handles this, as it is a show which is mainly focused on the good guys. We will see how Galadriel and the other elves react to this, especially as the show has tasked itself with providing a more meta-commentary on modern issues, progressivism, and social justice. Okay, so what is the Balrog? The Balrog is a demon-like creature that was sealed away long ago. In The Rings of Power, we see that the dwarves have accidentally released this creature from the depths of their minds. The Balrog itself is a great and ancient evil, one almost as powerful as Sauron himself. In The Lord of the Rings, we see that Gandalf sacrifices himself to save the Fellowship from this Balrog. While he does eventually defeat it, he is killed in the process, and thus begins the process by which he is reborn as Gandalf the White. Ultimately, this should give viewers a pretty good indication of what the Balrog is, and how incredibly powerful it is. If it's able to kill Gandalf, one of the most powerful beings in Middle-earth, then it's definitely not something to be taken lightly. What did Tolkien have to say about mithril? Despite Tolkien's vast universe, canon, and history, there isn't a whole lot known about mithril. In fact, Tolkien himself didn't write too much on the subject. This is likely because it wasn't a central plot point in The Lord of the Rings, so he didn't feel the need to provide too much information on it. However, what we do know is that mithril itself is an incredibly strong material and one which has important significance throughout the canon of the books. In fact, it was used to forge at least one of the Rings of Power. Galadriel's ring, Nenya, is the only one we know for sure is forged from mithril. However, given the lack of background on some of the other rings made, it's possible that more than one ring was forged from this powerful metal. There's no surprise here, as this material is one of the strongest and most rare in all of Middle-earth. It's also said to be very beautiful, which likely accounts for why the elves have such an affinity for it. In fact, the elves use an alloy of mithril called Ithildin to create elaborate gateways and etchings, which can only be seen in starlight or moonlight. This is just another example of the beauty and power of this metal. Finally, what does this mean for the future? The Rings of Power is a prequel, so we already know how the story ends. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't still plenty of stories to be told. In fact, there are a lot of stories yet to be explored. We don't yet know how the dwarves' discovery of mithril will ultimately affect the events of The Lord of the Rings. rings. We also don't know how this will impact Galadriel's character, as she is the focus of the Rings of Power. What we do know is that this is a significant plot point, and one which could have far-reaching consequences. With the Balrog soon to be loose in Middle-earth, it's only a matter of time before it reaches the surface and begins to wreak havoc. Or perhaps it waits buried in the mines and is discarded as a relevant plot point. Who knows? What we do know is that the Rings of Power is a show which is not afraid to take risks and is willing to explore the more dark and mature aspects of Tolkien's universe, along with subverting the expectations of viewers and even altering canon. With this in mind, it will be interesting to see where the show goes next and how the story develops. Okay, is the show worth watching? Well, that depends on who you ask. The Rings of Power is a controversial show. There are viewers divided on whether or not it's good. The main criticisms of the show are that it alters canon too much and that it's too progressive for its own good. Some viewers feel that the show is pushing an agenda and that it's straying too far from the source material. Other viewers feel that the show is a fresh take on a classic story and that it's actually more true to the spirit of Tolkien's work than the movies were. These viewers also feel that the changes made are necessary and display a correct adaptation for the modern age. As to what the case is, we'll let you decide. It could be that this show accurately displays Tolkien in a much-needed manner for the new age, or it could be that it violently tears from the source material in a way that just doesn't work. Whether you think it's good or bad though, there's one thing for sure. The discovery of the dwarves and the mithril that they found is definitely a bad thing. For now though, that's going to be it for this video. Go ahead and drop a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.